been a rough, historic hurricane season this year, and now here we are 6 weeks after Hurricane Maria slammed into Puerto Rico, so it's time now for a status report.
Yeah, 80% of homes have water now. Nearly half of the cell phone infrastructure is up and running now, but crews have restored electricity to barely 40% of the people on the island.
So we want to talk to Tom Lewis, who's the president of the U.S. division of Berger. The federal government is contracting some repair work to do to that company. And Tom, thank you so much for joining us via Skype this morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good morning.
So, you know, we've heard it many times about Puerto Rico's infrastructure being in bad shape even before the hurricane hit. Why was that the case?
Well, there was deferred maintenance of the utility grid in Puerto Rico because of the financial situation they were in. They actually entered bankruptcy last summer. And when you're in that kind of situation, it's hard to push off the typical maintenance like cutting back the trees that are near your power lines.
So what are you doing now to help improve that infrastructure as you rebuild basically from the ground up?
Well, first you have to start with the immediate, which is taking care of life safety and just the general functionality of the communities. And they do that with emergency generators, which are typically conventional diesel-fueled generators. And then after you get the basic functionality of the community up, you can start to look at the longer term and how you might use different technologies and different approaches to make the grid even better than it was before as you execute the long-term recovery.
Yeah, Tom, you hit it right on the head there as far as technologies that can maybe help us out. Talk about the roles of renewable and sustainable technologies in that rebuilding process.
Yeah, renewables like solar, like wind, and there are others, but they can play a major role if you can use technology to integrate them into the solution. There are things like battery storage, microgrids, and other technologies that can blend the sources from solar and wind with the diesel generators as well as the regular power grid. And in fact, once you do that, you can even use the renewables on a day-in, day-out basis to lower your utility bills and be more efficient and not just rely on them as a backup source when the power grid goes down.
Yeah, so many more choices now. Tell us a little bit about the public versus private partnership. The federal government is getting a lot of help now from private corporations such as Berger.
Yeah, the federal government basically funds the recovery to the point of building it back to essentially what was there before. That is the level of funding they will provide. So in order to build it back better and more efficient, really private sources of funding will need to participate. That can include banks as well as just private infrastructure funds, but it also can include insurance companies as well as even charitable organizations.
Okay, real quick, we're running out of time. Can you give us an update on the timeline at all? Are we still looking at maybe another 5 months or so before power is restored island-wide?
Yeah, originally the governor had a pretty ambitious target of 95% by the end of December. Now with the recent cancellation of a contract for the transmission grid restoration, that's definitely going to be pushed back at least to January, even on the most ambitious timeline. But I think you're right. I think it's more like 5 to 6 months out at least before you'll get that 90–95% restored level.
All right, Tom Lewis, president of U.S. operations for Berger, private contractor for the federal government working in Puerto Rico. Thank you so much for the update and really just hitting it home just how serious the situation there is.
Well,